May 31st, 1992. A Sunday forever carved into Formula One history. While the world marveled at Nigel Mansell's absolute dominance with his Williams, Ayrton Senna, already a three-time world champion, showed that talent, courage, and strategic intelligence could transform an apparently lost race into a masterpiece. The Monaco Grand Prix has always carried a special weight for both drivers and fans. The narrow streets of the Principality allow no mistakes, and victory there is regarded as a trophy of prestige far beyond mere points. On that day, Senna started knowing his car was not the fastest. McLaren could no longer rival Williams's superiority, but Monaco, with its tight corners and unforgiving walls, offered something else: a stage for brilliance, reflexes, and above all, a nearly supernatural ability to defend a position. With just 6 laps to go, everything changed. Mansell, until then the uncontested leader and dominant winner of the 5 opening rounds of 1992, suffered a puncture and was forced to pit. He rejoined behind Senna with fresh tires and unmatched speed. The Englishman, nicknamed the Lion for his fierce and aggressive style, seemed destined to retake the lead. But Senna had no intention of surrendering. What followed was one of the most unforgettable duels in Formula One history. Senna in a slower car with worn tires, resisting the relentless attacks of Mansell lap after lap. The Brazilian turned defense into an art form, showing once again why Monaco was his kingdom. Chapter 1. The context of the season. The 1992 season had started in overwhelming fashion for Williams. The British team had reached a technological level never before seen in Formula One. The FW14B, designed by Adrian Newey, was considered a masterpiece. Equipped with active suspension, a semi-automatic gearbox, and flawless aerodynamics, the car was practically unbeatable. Behind the wheel was Nigel Mansell, a driver known for his fearless, aggressive style, earning him the nickname, the Lion. Finally, after years of near misses, he seemed to have the perfect machine to claim his long-awaited world title. Unsurprisingly, he had won the first 5 races of 1992 with authority, building a lead that already marked him as the undeniable championship favorite. On the other side stood Ayrton Senna, already a 3-time world champion but enduring a difficulty year with McLaren. The red and white car that had so often carried him to glory was beginning to show signs of obsolescence in the face of the technological revolution spearheaded by Williams. Senna knew he didn't have the machinery to fight head-to-head over the course of the season. Still, his mindset was never to accept defeat before the checkered flag. He approached each race as an opportunity, and if there was one place where he could balance the scales, it was Monaco. The Monaco Grand Prix always carried symbolic weight. It wasn't just about points in the championship, but about prestige and immortality. Winning on the narrow streets of the Principality meant inscribing your name in racing history. Senna had already won there 4 times and was approaching Graham Hill's record as Mr. Monaco. In 1992, the Brazilian knew he didn't have the fastest car, but he carried within himself the certainty that his skill could make the difference. While Mansell arrived with momentum and superiority, Senna prepared to show that there was still room for genius in a championship dictated by technology. As the weekend began, the atmosphere was already filled with anticipation. Fans wondered whether Williams would continue their supremacy or if someone, perhaps Senna, could break the streak. The stage was set for yet another chapter in one of the greatest rivalries the sport had ever seen. Chapter 2. The beginning of the race. On a sunny Sunday, May 31st, the grid confirmed Mansell's favoritism. With his Williams, he once again secured pole position and lined up to repeat the script of previous races: launch well, open a gap, and dominate. Senna, in his McLaren, started further back, fully aware that keeping up with the Englishman's pace was nearly impossible. When the red lights went out, Mansell leapt forward without difficulty. Within the opening laps, he already built a safe margin, while Senna settled into what seemed to be, at best, a fight for the podium. The race unfolded in monotonous fashion, a calculated procession led by Williams. Each lap only confirmed Mansell's superiority, and for the crowd, the result seemed like a foregone conclusion. But Senna was never the type of driver to give up. Even knowing he lacked the machinery to contend for victory under normal conditions, he remained absolutely focused. In Monaco, even the smallest mistake could prove decisive. The Brazilian knew he had to be ready to seize any opportunity. While the spectators braced for another routine Mansell triumph, fate was preparing something far more dramatic. Monaco's narrow streets, lined with unforgiving barriers, have a peculiar way of turning seemingly uneventful races into legendary finales. That was precisely what began to take shape as the race entered its closing stages. Up until that moment, the narrative had been predictable. Mansell in command, Senna resisting. But Formula One has a unique talent for flipping everything upside down in a heartbeat. And on that afternoon, destiny decided to offer the world one of the greatest duels the Principality had ever witnessed. Chapter 3. The twist with 6 laps to go. The clock ticked down toward the final laps of the 1992 Monaco Grand Prix. In the grandstands, spectators had already resigned themselves. Nigel Mansell, the man of the moment, was on his way to yet another dominant victory. Williams was in a league of its own, and the Englishman seemed untouchable. The race had unfolded like clockwork, without drama or surprises. Senna, for his part, remained in second, distant but vigilant, as if waiting for a chance only a champion could sense. And that chance appeared. Suddenly, Mansell felt something wrong with his car. The steering no longer responded as before, and the rear end felt loose. The suspicion was confirmed: a slow puncture in one of his rear tires. The unchallenged leader was forced to pit with just 6 laps remaining. The time lost was enough to transform a guaranteed win into a nightmare. As Williams serviced Mansell's car, Senna roared past on the main straight to seize the lead. The crowd erupted in disbelief. For the first time all weekend, Mansell wasn't in front. But the celebration seemed temporary. The Englishman rejoined the track right behind Senna, now armed with fresh tires and immense grip, while the Brazilian was left clinging to heavily worn rubber. The performance gap between the two cars was staggering. Each corner brought Mansell closer. The stopwatch told the story. Senna's lead shrank with every lap. McLaren lacked straight-line speed, cornering grip, and overall pace. It seemed impossible to hold on. At least, that was the logical assumption. But logic had no place when Ayrton Senna was behind the wheel. The Brazilian, with inferior equipment, tapped into the one weapon that had always set him apart: his uncanny ability to perform under pressure. He knew every bump, every curb, every centimeter of those streets. As Mansell closed in, Senna stayed calm, breathing deeply, building an invisible wall that turned his McLaren into something larger than life. Mansell threw everything at him. With new tires, he attacked ferociously, trying the inside, threatening the outside, lunging at every breaking point. Yet every time, Senna shut the door with surgical precision, anticipating his rival's every move. Lap after lap, tension skyrocketed. Spectators held their breath with every Mansell attempt. Cameras zoomed in on the Englishman's tense face, his steering wheel jerking as he searched desperately for a different line. Meanwhile, Senna remained unshakable, his focus absolute. For 6 laps that felt eternal, the streets of Monaco became a stage for one of the greatest defensive masterclasses in racing history. Chapter 4. Senna's impeccable defense. Monaco's narrow walls turned into the arena for a legendary duel. Senna, with his worn McLaren, led with determination, while Mansell, in his flawless Williams, hunted like a predator. The differences were glaring. Mansell had fresh rubber, superior traction, and unmatched speed. Senna, by contrast, had only fading tires and a slower car. Yet the Brazilian possessed something no stopwatch could measure: a near supernatural gift for defensive. Driving corner after corner, Mansell probed. He tried the inside line, feinted on the outside, and pressured under braking. But Senna seemed always one step ahead, placing his McLaren exactly where it needed to be. He didn't flinch, didn't overreact. Every move was measured, cold, and precise. At moments it seemed inevitable the Williams would break through. The speed difference was immense, and Mansell often pulled alongside on corner exits. But Senna countered with reflexes that bordered on instinct, forcing Mansell to back off. It was as if the Brazilian understood not only the track but also the psychological limits of the man chasing him. The spectacle was mesmerizing. The gap between the cars was sometimes no more than inches. To the crowd, it felt like Mansell was brushing Senna's gearbox, ready to pounce. Yet Senna turned millimeters into fortresses, using every barrier and curb as allies. For 6 agonizing laps, the dance continued. Senna's McLaren became an immovable object against Mansell's irresistible force, and in that duel, the Brazilian elevated defensive driving into pure art. Chapter 5. The Checkered Flag. As the final lap began, the tension reached its peak. Grandstands were on their feet, the air electric. Nigel Mansell had tried everything, his faster Williams glued to the back of Senna's McLaren. But nothing had worked. Each braking zone, each acceleration, each apex, Senna had denied him every chance. The Brazilian's concentration never faltered. Even as his tires screamed for mercy, he guided the McLaren flawlessly, as if sheer willpower alone held the car together. Out of the last corner, Mansell made one last, desperate push, but Senna held firm. Across the line he went, arms raised, in triumph. Against all odds, he had done it. It was his 5th victory in Monaco, tying Graham Hill's record as Mr. Monaco. The celebrations were emotional. Ron Dennis, McLaren's team boss, embraced Senna tightly, fully aware of the magnitude of what had just happened. It wasn't merely another win, it was proof that talent and heart could sometimes conquer superior machinery. For Brazilian fans, the triumph meant everything. In a season where McLaren couldn't challenge for titles, this victory reaffirmed Senna's greatness. It was not just about numbers or records, it was about the essence of who he was. A fighter who never surrendered. On that day, the checkered flag didn't just end a race. It sealed a moment that would forever be remembered as one of Formula One's most extraordinary battles. Chapter 6. Mansell's Recognition. After the race, the contrast between the two drivers was striking. Ayrton Senna, exhausted but radiant, celebrated with his team. Nigel Mansell, defeated after dominating the weekend, sat on the ground, drained physically and emotionally. But instead of bitterness, Mansell showed humility and respect. His words became legendary. It felt like there were 3 McLarens in front of me. It was his way of describing the impossibility of overtaking Senna, even with every advantage on his side. This recognition wasn't empty praise. Mansell, known as the Fierce Lion, had battled countless opponents, but he knew when he had encountered something greater. That day, it wasn't Williams that lost, it was Senna who won. The press amplified his statement, highlighting the duel as one of the greatest showcases of skill the sport had ever seen. For Mansell, it was a reminder of how extraordinary Senna truly was. For the fans, it was confirmation that Formula One was not just about machines, but about human genius. Mansell's words didn't diminish his own achievement. He would still go on to secure the 1992 title. But in Monaco, the spotlight belonged to Senna, and Mansell himself acknowledged it. That mutual respect transformed their rivalry into something deeper. The duel was not just a fight for position, it was a moment of recognition between 2 gladiators, each aware of the greatness of the other. Chapter 7. The Legacy of this victory. Senna's triumph in Monaco 1992 was not merely another victory on his resume. It was proof that even in the face of impossible odds, genius could prevail over technology. That Sunday made clear that Senna was not just fast. He was a warrior, a strategist, an artist who turned Monaco's streets into his personal canvas. Equaling Graham Hill with 5 Monaco wins, Senna cemented his bond with the Principality. Where others faltered, he thrived. In 1992, he once again proved that Monte Carlo was his kingdom. The victory also rejuvenated McLaren. The team knew the season would be dominated by Williams, but conquering Monaco carried symbolic weight. Ron Dennis's emotional embrace captured that perfectly. Even in a losing year, Monaco could feel like a championship of its own. For Mansell, though defeated, the duel reinforced his respect for Senna. His acknowledgement added weight to the achievement. For the fans, the 6 final laps were pure theater, a reminder of why they loved the sport. Over time, the race became a reference point in racing schools and analyses. Senna's defensive masterclass was studied and celebrated as the epitome of racecraft. It wasn't just driving. It was a lesson in resilience, intelligence, and artistry. The legacy of that day transcends the track. It showed that Senna didn't need the best car to be unforgettable. He transformed adversity into opportunity, teaching generations that true greatness lies in refusing to yield. May 31st, 1992 will forever be remembered in Formula One history, not just as the date of Ayrton Senna's 5th Monaco win, but as the day human talent outshone technology. The world witnessed a driver turn an inferior car into an impenetrable fortress, resisting the relentless attacks of Mansell armed with every possible advantage. The image of Senna crossing the line, Dennis's emotional embrace, and Mansell's exhaustion captured the spirit of that race. It was a reminder that in racing, as in life, having the best tools isn't enough. What matters most is courage, vision, and heart. Senna's legacy is eternal, and the victory in Monaco 1992 stands as one of its brightest chapters. A triumph that still proves to this day that genius can defy even the harshest logic.